Any views expressed in this film are those of the artists, recorded as part of the Future is Loading exhibition. Describe the work you are contributing to the show.
Hi, my name is Panteha Abareshi, and I'm recording this Q&A for the Future is Loading show for the Shape Open. I'll be showing 3 pieces. The first one is entitled 4 Parts, and it's a video piece that I've made during the quarantine. Using some performance for video footage that I took actually back in February before I had to return to my family home. And it's really about sort of me contemplating my own body's personal changes that come with getting prosthetics and medical implants, and sort of really thinking about like the body as inorganic, my body specifically, and the way to break away from the able-bodied standards of performance, appearance, behavior that sort of dictate what we consider human and what we consider sort of subhuman. And without even realizing it, so much of our language around health, around the body, really ostracizes the sick, disabled experience. And so I've been very conscious of that, especially sort of struggling with living in a body that is becoming defunct. And so this piece is really sort of the transition from like body to machine, from organic to inorganic, where the body that I'm in can never truly adhere to either sides of those. It can never truly be human. It can never truly be inhuman. It can never truly be machine, but it can never truly be sort of like organic. And so it's like this liminal space that's created for a lot of people, but for, it's a very personal work. So it's based off of my experience, this sort of liminal space that I find myself existing in, where every standard of able-bodiedness is impossible to achieve. And of course, the impossible standard of machine and true cyborg is also impossible to achieve. So I made the piece from bed here in quarantine, and then I composed an audio track that's using these sort of mechanic sounds, machine sounds, and also sort of sounds that I've recorded in the hospital, air hissing, and all of these things sort of create a track that is mimicking both the human and inhuman, where you hear rhythm and you might associate that with heartbeat, but it also transforms into sort of the very precise pumping and running of a machine. So then the next piece that I have in the show is a 2-dimensional piece that's a part of a series of work also made here during quarantine. And this series specifically is sort of thinking about just sort of like visual representation, gestural representation, and what I could do from bed, being completely bedbound, just making a sort of a series of work that is documenting what I'm feeling, what I'm thinking. And so there are very simple diagrams and texts that I've made, and on these sort of very bright, colorful backgrounds. And I have one of these pieces in the show, and it's entitled Just Again. And it's sort of a visual representation of like a loop, where the beginning and the end are the same point, and it says, here we go again, or here we are again. And I think that, I think a lot about sort of how so much of illness and disability and a lot of things that in the way we think about the body and the way we think about like human life in general is put on a very like linear trajectory in a way, where there isn't room to understand that for many bodies, and of course my own I'm speaking about here, exists in a way where everything is sort of a cycle, and it's like this repetitive reckoning with my own body. And it's this process that that is a big part of my life, coming to terms with my disability and my illness again and again and again as my body gets worse, because it's never something that you grow accustomed to or that I grow comfortable with. So it's sort of this piece specifically is sort of thinking about how um, there is no really beginning and ending to the experience that I'm having in my own body. It's sort of like everything just is like one big feedback loop, and I'm just sort of like experiencing like the illness and all at once, if that makes any sense. But um, the pieces are like very sort of like simple in their graphics, but referential for me to textbooks, science textbooks, sort of like infographic or like scientific diagrams used for education. So thinking about boiling down these very large, um, heavy, personal, existential ideas into simple line drawings, I think really speaks to the human need to be able to understand everything and be able to visually convey things as a way of pretending that we understand what's going on. It's like because we can make a sort of vague illustration of relativity in the universe doesn't necessarily mean that we fully have a grasp on it. You know, just because we can make a rough diagram of a wormhole doesn't mean that we really truly know what that is. And I think that relates to a lot of how we think about mortality, illness, fragility of the body, is that if we can illustrate what we know about the body, what we know about the mind, what we know about illness, then we fully understand it. And that's just not the case. So, and then my last piece is entitled Not Better Yet. And this is a piece that I made in the winter of last year. And it features me doing performance work. It's shot on Super 8mm color negative film and VHS film. For parts, the performance is only shot on VHS. But in Not Better Yet, I'm doing this performance, and it's sort of cut between audio of me in the hospital that I've recorded of nurses and doctors talking to me. I did that at the time as a way of documenting disrespect, disregard, and lack of understanding for what I was going through, because I was feeling very unsafe in the hospital, emotionally and physically, in the way that I was in an extreme amount of pain and no one was sort of taking care of me in the way that they were supposed to be, and sort of invalidating the pain that I was in. So there's all this audio that I've recorded in the hospital, interspersed between this performance of me contorting my body in painful performative ways. And the process of performance for me is so cathartic and so important, because it's really where I feel the most control over my body. So that moment where I'm in control, even though it's pushing me beyond my limits, even though it was so excruciating, like that performance directly contrasts with these really vulnerable moments that I've caught on audio, where I feel so helpless, so powerless, completely out of control of my body, really reckoning with the fact that my body is in the hands of people who don't care about it, and don't really understand truly what's going on. So it's that contrast. And the piece itself is just like overall, the whole piece is really me thinking about when I was coming to terms with the concept of not ever getting better, and thinking about this language that we use around health, where you are expected to just be working towards getting better, and it's like you get better until you're healed. And for my case, after one specific hospitalization, I really had this moment where I was talking about how long I would need care, how long I would be, immobilized, like all of these things. And it's like so much of the way we regard disability and illness in the process of healing is like you just sit and wait until you get better and you're better enough to continue. And I had this moment where I was like, if I did that, I would never be able to resume any semblance of my life. Like no one is teaching me how to live with my illness every day. Everyone is expecting that you just wait. And it's like when you have a chronic genetic slew of illnesses, you're going to be waiting indefinitely. And so coming to terms with that is always really difficult for me. And it's something that never stops happening. It's something that's really difficult for me to face every time I have to face a worsening part of my condition, every new surgery that I have, all of this. So that piece is in response to that, into the notion of embracing being sick for the rest of your life.
You can view the Future is Loading exhibition on our Instagram and our website at www.shapearts.org.uk.